What is up, guys? It is the Scarlet Duelist back again with another deck profile that I am confident calling pretty good. We've got the Odd Eyes deck profile. This one I definitely would say could top a regional and maybe even go places at a YCS depending on what you upgrade. But yeah, guys, it's amazing. I really love playing the deck. It has just such a high ceiling. It's got what seems to be like an answer for everything. It's just so consistent. And I'll show you some ways that works and some of the combos that it can accomplish as we approach them. But yeah, I mean, it's just a crazy deck, and it's really fun because it's not an over complex Pendulum deck, which was something that intimidated me from starting Pendulums in the first place. I've never really played a Pendulum deck before this one. My brain just sometimes gets a little bit short-circuited at the amount of options that they present. But Odd Eyes was just the right amount, and it's been a really fun intro to running a Pendulum deck. So if you're a person that is new to playing a deck like this is definitely a good way to start. And even if you're not, this is a really solid deck to play and be able to win a lot of matches. Like, it's just been really successful so far. So if you're looking for a budget-friendly deck that can, compete pretty well, I would definitely consider playing this deck. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start doing the profile. All right, we've got obviously the OG Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon. We've got 3 Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon and 2 Odd Eyes Phantom Dragon. We've got 2 of Odd Eyes Pendulum just because it's not necessarily something that you have to see all the time to get your plays going. Neither is Odd Eyes Phantom Dragon, and they're so searchable in the deck that 2 is just fine. It works very well. Odd Eyes Pendulum and Odd Eyes Phantom can work together to create an OTK potentially with other cards if you are attacking for the win. Which is an underrated way of winning and removing cards from the field nowadays. I do feel like we are so heavily relying on reactive cards to negate something don't underestimate winning by battle anymore, because believe it or not, I've done it several times with this. I haven't had to go into my heavy negate boards or any sort of reactive board at all. I could just go straight into big beat sticks that aren't activating anything, so they can't be reacted to, and just won that way. So very cool. Really fun interactions with this deck. And then lastly, out of these 3, Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum is really cool because he's your scale 8, but also it can be a vanilla beat stick if you want it to be, but most of the time you use this to get its search/special summon effect going, because you can special summon an Odd Eyes monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard if any of your Odd Eyes cards are destroyed on the field, which is so powerful. And you have so many ways to get that done on purpose if you want to, that's really useful. Next, we've got 1 Performapal Odd Eyes Dissolver. We've got 3 Mythical Beast Jackal King and 3 Odd Eyes Persona Dragon. All right, so Performapal Odd Eyes Dissolver is a fusion card. It's searchable, so it's really cool because you can special summon it with your Arc Pendulum effect, or you can use Electromite to get that done, and it accomplishes getting your fusion monsters out that are in the extra deck, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So very cool card. It's more useful when it's on the field, but it's also still effective enough in the Pendulum zone. If you need to put it there, let's say you don't get any other scale 4s, you can still use it as kind of a makeshift polymerization. But I really like using the on-field effect just because you can use cards that are in your Pendulum zone as materials as well as this one, so you don't necessarily lose monsters that you would prefer to be on the field. Next, we've got Mythical Beast Jackal King. What's cool is you don't need this to set up negation boards, but it's nice to have just in case you need some more, because it's also searchable with Electromite. But I put in 3 because it's also a decent scale 4. I guess like just a generic scale 4. You're not really using any Pendulum effect with Jackal King. But if you can manage to get it out on the board too, it's just another way to interrupt and stop your opponent with negates. Next, we've got Odd Eyes Persona Dragon. Kind of the same deal as Jackal King, really, just slightly different. It negates monsters that were summoned from the extra deck for the end of the turn. Or, sorry, not for the end of the turn, until the end of the turn. And it's a level 5, which helps us get out our Paradise Smasher, which I'll talk about at the end. And it does have a pendulum effect, but I tend to not end up using it. In fact, I'm looking at it right now because I sort of forget what it is. Let's just take a look here. Once per turn during the end phase, if your opponent activated a card or effect this turn that targeted one Odd Eyes Pendulum monster you controlled and no other cards while this card was in your Pendulum zone, special summon this card, and if you do, place one face-up Odd Eyes Pendulum monster from your extra deck in your Pendulum zone except Odd Eyes Persona. Okay, so it's pretty situational, but if this is in your Pendulum zone and your opponent happens to target another Odd Eyes monster that you have on the field, you can then special summon this onto the field and you have another extra deck monster negation. So it's cool to know that when it's in your Pendulum zone, it isn't totally just wasted there. It can potentially come out on the field and replace itself. So again, a situational effect, but still pretty cool that it can happen sometimes. I tend to not end up using it, to be honest, but I guess it's cool that the option is there. Next, we have 2 Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon, 2 Supreme King Gate Darkworm, and 1 Supreme King Gate Zero. Odd Eyes Mirage, for me, it does have that protection effect, but for me, it does end up being just a body that I use to bring out Electromite if I do have to normal summon to get there, which I guess depends on what your goal is, because sometimes I prefer to normal summon so that I can save up my Pendulum summon until the very end play so that I can have my full board set up. So what I usually try to do is either special summon some of my other cards out here and then normal summon another, such as Odd Eyes Mirage to go into Electromite to get plays going. But obviously, there are lots of things you can do when you're running a Pendulum deck. So that's not our only play, it's just nice to be able to. That's why I have it at 2, just because, again, if I need it, it's searchable. But if it ends up in my hand, it's not the worst thing. It's just not something that I want to draw into mid-game most of the time. And with Darkworm, the reason it's at 2 and not 3 is because it's also searchable if needed, and I have 3 Dragon Shrine to send it to the graveyard to special summon it. So yeah, there's just lots of ways to get to these. So they're fine at 2. And then we have 1 Gate Zero because it's obviously only going to be searched off of Darkworm. You don't want to necessarily draw into this. If you do, you know, it happens. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but you're trying not to because you'd rather see other cards. So you search this to gain card advantage a little bit. You can use it for lots of different plays, honestly, which I'll talk about once we go into the extra deck. And the last little bit of our monsters here, we've got 4, so I'll try and squeeze them. We've got Xianke Magician, Performapal Yu-Go Golem, Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser, Noble Dragon Magician, and Performapal Odd Eyes Synchron. I don't normally like to crowd my cards on here like this, but this is fine. Xianke Magician is pretty simple. You have this, you search it when you want to use it. If you end up with it in your hand, again, not the end of the world, because scale 3 is pretty good still when you can have your scale 8s as well. But you use this in your Pendulum zone to target one of your Exceeds monsters, aka Odd Eyes Absolute, and then you can special summon your Raging on top of that and then gain those bonus effects from Raging. A lot of people don't use this because they try to just get out Raging with other ways or other methods and then just use the rank up spell to bring Kali Yuga. That's not my goal in this deck. I actually really like to use Raging just for its OTK potential because it wipes your opponent's board, inflicts damage, and then can attack more. So pretty cool to be able to do that kind of whenever we want to. Then you've got Performapal wow, I said that wrong. Performapal Yu-Go Golem. Nailed it first try. This is there as an additional, like, you gain card advantage back if you happen to fusion summon, which you do often. And you can add one of your Performapal or Odd Eyes cards, or even a Magician card if you use one, back to your hand from your extra deck. So it's pretty nice to be able to... Wow, did it again. 2 mistakes. Wouldn't be me if there weren't 2 or more talking mistakes in a video. You just gain back card advantage. I did it again. I said it weird and nasally. You gain back card advantage. There, that was so natural. And then you can possibly pendulum summon the card you added back to the field without using an extra monster zone. So he can be very useful at times. If not, you use him as material after special summoning Abyss Actor or Dark Worm to go into Electromite or your Time Thief Redoer. Next, we have Abyss Actor Curtain Raiser. Pretty self-explanatory. If you don't know, this is basically just a free special summon of itself by putting it in the Pendulum Zone first and then special summoning it. But if not, you can still just normal summon it after dang it, after, which does not have an O in it. After you maybe special summon something else, such as a Dark Worm, you can still normal summon this and continue that play. Next, we have Noble Dragon Magician, which is good to be able to synchro specifically into your Odd Eyes Meteor Burst. It unfortunately cannot be used to make any level 7 synchros other than dragons, and I only run Meteor Burst. I took out Clearwing after testing with it just because I found that I never made it. But bringing out Meteor Burst is good because then you can pull up something from your Pendulum Zone, whether you want to tech in an Amorphage Goliath or use a level 7 to go into rank 7 plays with Meteor Burst. Yeah, that's an option. And finally, we have Performapal Odd Eye Synchron. This is to help make Clearwing, I believe it's Clearwing Fast Dragon. The level 8, no, it's Supreme King Dragon Clearwing, that's what it is. I get those mixed up every time. But this allows you to make that, and then it also allows you to make, let me think, I gotta look. I don't know why, but I'm drawing a blank. Oh, yeah. It can also let you make your FA Dawn Dragster, depending on what levels you augment and how you synchro with it. But yeah, this is there for your more generic synchro plays that are not dragons, which we only have one. And it's a very useful card because it's one of the most searchable cards in the game. So you can, again, search for a lot of these whenever you need them. And that's what's cool about a Pendulum deck. You can search your random one-ofs, so it's okay to have them, and it's not as big of a deal as other decks where if you had this many one-ofs in another deck, it may not be good, depending on your reasoning. Maybe it is, but you can really justify it more in a Pendulum deck because of how searchable it is. They are so dang consistent, guys. Next, we've got our spells. We're not actually running any traps, so that'll make that easier because we don't have to categorize as many things. Next, we've got 3 Sky Iris and 3 Spiral Flame Strike, 2 Duelist Alliance, and I'll squeeze in 1 Summoner's Art. These are all your search cards. So right now you have 3, 6, 8, 9 math. You've got 9 cards that essentially get you what you would like to see in your hand. So most of these are going to search you, especially these 6 are going to search you your Arc Pendulum Dragon if you haven't seen it yet. So the chances of you opening on Arc Pendulum Dragon are very high. But you can also use Spiral Flame Strike to search, if you really want to see Phantom or the regular Pendulum Dragon, or you can destroy a card. So it's very useful, and it is not a once per turn unlike the rest of these. So that's pretty cool, which I guess Summoner Art isn't, but you only need to add 1 Arc Pendulum. So yeah, very good card. Then we have Sky Iris, which is a better effect than the rest because it does let you search for any Odd Eyes card. So that's really nice. The only downside is it is once per turn, which I guess, that would be so broken if it was not. And then it has that protection effect. So this is really good when comboing with Arc Pendulum in your Pendulum Zone. You destroy the other card that's an Odd Eyes card, and then you get to search and then use Arc Pendulum to special summon. So that's a really solid combo. And then you can do something similar with Spiral Flame. If you have this and Arc Pendulum, you can destroy the other card in your Pendulum Zone to do that. Duelist Alliance is interesting because I don't have it in the main deck, but if I did side it in, I could also use Duelist Alliance to search Pendulum Zone, which is kind of a soft Not a lock, but it's kind of like a stall card for a turn. So I could search that potentially. You can search any card that says Pendulum in it. So that's pretty cool. That opens up some doors. I've actually ordered and I'm going to experiment with it. It's not here yet, but I'm going to try and see how well, I believe it's Soul Pendulum works from Dual Power. If I have that name wrong, definitely correct me in the comments because I might be blanking on that. But that being searchable could make for some really cool plays too, as long as I'm thinking of that right. But yeah, these are all your search cards and they've got some bonus effects to go with that. Or them, not that, whatever. Same difference. Next we've got 3 Dragon Shrine, 3 Called by the Grave, and 1 Odd Eyes Fusion. Because Odd Eyes Fusion is searchable, no reason to have more than 1, because you can quite literally get it most of the time whenever you want it. Then you have Called by the Grave at 3, just because this is one of those decks where a hand trap can stop Electromite pretty easily, and you'd rather that not happen. If it does, it's not the end of the world. You can set up still a pretty good board. It's just not going to be as strong as if you got to go off with Electromite. So you definitely want to have this at 3 to maximize the number of chances that you're protected from a hand trap, just because, yeah, they can be pretty hurtful. It's a downside for Pendulums, I will say. And then you have Dragon Shrine just to ensure that you get that Dark Worm special summon. You want to maximize the chances of that happening. That way you don't have to engage in a Pendulum summon in order to have enough materials to make Electromite. You can still make really good boards if you do. It's just way better to be able to save that Pendulum summon for the very last play so that your board is all set up and you had the most chances to make things and had the most materials out on the field. Yeah, so that is it, I do believe, for the main deck. Now we'll talk about the extra deck. All right, you know what's coming first. We have Metal Foes Electromite. This is the one that it can also combo with Arc Pendulum. If you didn't use its effect yet and you've summoned Heavy Metal Foes Electromite, you can of course add the 1 Pendulum monster to your extra deck face up and then destroy another to add 1 back to your hand. So it's essentially a free search, and you get to draw a card if you do that. So that's crazy the amount this does for a Link 2, and it's just so easy to make. Then we've got Zephyr Metaltron. I have this in here just to open up those bottom 3 zones because you can make this very easily. So what I do is use Electromite to get board set up, Pendulum summon, and whatever material I don't really care about losing to add on to Electromite, link those off into Metaltron, and then you have that kind of going for you for more link zones later. Or you can, if you found a way to have another monster out, hopefully you can, then you can go into Metaltron before you Pendulum summon, and then you have 3 zones to Pendulum summon into from your extra deck, just opening up some more options for you. It's not a big deal if you don't get that play though. That's like the womboest of combos. You don't see that super duper often, but you do very consistently make Electromite and go into a really good board after that. Next, we've got for possible side decking option. I just have it in the main deck because you can make it without super polymerization. But I personally would side deck super polymerization, and then if I'm going against a dark heavy deck, which they're out there, I would then just activate Super Poly to bring out Starving Venom. But you can also make Starving Venom with your other fusion cards. So this is in there because you can still make it pretty consistently if you want to see it. But again, very fun to make with Super Poly too if you want to tech that in or at least side deck it. Next, we've got Performapow Gatling Ghoul. This is there to inflict some burn damage and just go. It's kind of a game finisher sometimes. Like if your opponent's exhausted resources and they're kind of resting on that one thing to try and stop you, you bring out Gatling Ghoul, burn them, then attack and win. So very good card for that. It's definitely one that you have to pick the right situation to use it. Now that's not the same thing as me saying that it's a situational card, because I found it to be useful. It's just not your turn 1 play most of the time. But very good card. Then we've got 2 Odd Eyes Vortex because they are negate anythings, and we can make them recur with Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum. So very good card. I think, very busted card. I think it's pretty crazy that it can just negate anything by shuffling a Pendulum monster. But yeah, I mean, if it's there, we're going to use it. So it's very good, guys. Definitely have this in your Odd Eyes deck. You would be silly not to. Then we've got Supreme King Dragon Clearwing. That's what, yeah, I was right. Supreme King Dragon Clearwing. This is just a way to kind of blow up the board and deal some damage as well. We don't make this very often, but again, there are situations where it's like, I need to make that, and you can whenever you decide to. So very underrated card in the deck. Excuse me. You can also use Raging Dragon for the same thing. So you've got a couple options on how you want to blow up the board. So yeah, that's in there. Next, we've got F.A. Dawn Dragster, just in case you need that extra spell and trap negation. You can make this pretty easily using the searchable Odd Eyes Perform a Pal Synchron. I think I said those words in the right order. If not, you know, life's going to go on, so we're okay. Next, we've got Odd Eyes Meteor Burst at 2, because it does help us bring up a level 7 from our Pendulum Zone, or even if we want to side deck in a Morphage Goliath. Lock out our opponent, but most of the time I bring up a level 7 to more consistently go into Odd Eyes Absolute, which then I can either link off or use Xianke Magician to make into Odd Eyes Raging, which is another crazy cool machine. It's not actually a machine monster, but I just think it's awesome. It allows me to blow up the field and then make 2 attacks. So that's pretty dang cool. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, you can make this gain 200 attack for every card that you ended up destroying. So that's pretty nifty, because it's quite possible that you OTK at that point using that effect. Next, we've got number 67, Paradise Smasher. This is basically a more consistent Azathoth. Now what I mean by that is, for this deck it's more consistent because we can create a level 5 a little bit easier, because our Odd Eyes Persona Dragon is so searchable. It's very easy to get 3 on the board at the same time if this is your goal. Now, you will not get the crazy boards as usual. Like, if you do choose that route to stun your opponent for a turn, so far it's been just about the only thing I do in combination with Electromite, but it can be done pretty consistently, where you get out 3 Persona Dragon and then you make Paradise Smasher, and it guarantees that until the end of your opponent's turn after this one, I don't know why I said that. I overcomplicated that phrasing. At the end of their next turn, until the end, goodness sakes, I cannot get this out. Until the end of their next turn, they cannot activate monster effects or attack. So you've stunned them for a whole turn, other than spells and traps that they can play or set. So very good, and you can consistently make it. But what's cool is, like, I mean, it's not our turn 1 goal every single time, but if you know it's going to work, go for it, because you can do it. Now, am I saying you can do this whenever you want, anytime? No, but what I'm saying is a lot of the time you can manage to get there, and it's a really powerful effect. I'm surprised a lot of people don't end up using this, but I think it's because Azathoth is a lingering effect. It's not something that activates or can be negated. It just is made, and that's it. This is something that your opponent could chain to and negate and stop, so I guess it's slightly less powerful. But I like having a 1-card ability to do that, rather than having to tech in at least 4, I believe. No, 3 technically, because I don't have to run Rusty, I don't have to run Silent Boots, and then have the rank up spell. I can just play this. So I personally like that better, but that's just me. Finally, our last card is Time Thief Redoer, because you can make rank 4s and then clear the extra monster zone. This is just another way to add some disruption to your opponent. I really enjoy Redoer because, like I said, it adds disruption, but it frees up the zones so that you can Pendulum Summon or go into another type of monster in the extra monster zone. You've got some really cool disruption. and just interactions going. So yeah, that is the extra deck with Odd Eyes, and it all works, guys. I've been testing it for a really long time. It is a super fun deck, and it's so powerful. The ceiling is just crazy high, and I didn't know that until I tried it, and I'm just blown away by how fun and how good this deck is. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't have any side deck for this deck right now, but if I do make any updates, I will definitely put those out there at some point, if I go over combos later in another video. But yeah, this is so long right now that I think we'll go ahead and conclude it, and maybe we'll do combos in another video at another time. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the profile, definitely give the video a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.